Shall I start the presentation or shall we wait for some time?
Yes. If you start the presentation, your presentation, we will follow the sequence.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone here, and good morning in Germany, the colleagues there. I would like to welcome everyone present here today on the SPARC International Symposium on Mahatma Gandhi and Linguistic Diversity. Today I will be giving a brief overview of Mahatma Gandhi, his life and ideals in connection with our SPARC International Symposium. Starting in 2019, Professor Dr. Joseph Van Genabit and Dr. Krishna Ispanai Bonnet have been collaborating with NIT Silchar in Assam, India, on behalf of Jharkhand University, Germany, on research in machine translation under the SPARC program funded by the Government of India. Respected Director of NIT Silchar, Professor Sivaji Bandyopadhyay, and myself are the investigators representing NIT Silchar for the SPARC project P9 and 5. To celebrate the 150th birthday anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, research projects funded under SPARC are organizing a number of public online events related to the general topic of the joint research, but accessible to the general public and with a connection to the life and philosophies of Mahatma Gandhi. Today, we are celebrating the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi as a tribute to offer to the father of nation. Gandhiji was born on 2nd October 1869 in Porbandar, Gujarat. His father's name was Karamchand Gandhi and mother's name was Putlibai. At the age of 19, Mohandas left home to study law in London at the Inner Temple, one of the city's 4 law colleges. He soon accepted a position with an Indian firm upon his return to India that sent him to its office in South Africa. Along with his wife, Kasturbai, and their children, Gandhiji remained in South Africa for nearly 20 years. When Gandhi arrived in South Africa, he was quickly appalled by the discrimination and the racial segregation faced by the Indian immigrants at the hands of the white British and Boer authorities. Upon his first appearance in the Durban courtroom, Gandhi was asked to remove his turban. He refused and left the court instead. A seminal moment occurred on June 7, 1893, during a train trip to Pretoria, South Africa, when a white man objected to Gandhiji's presence in the first-class railway compartment, although he had a ticket. Refusing to move to the back of the train, Gandhiji was forcibly removed and thrown off the train at a station in Pietermaritzburg. Gandhi's act of civil disobedience awoke in him a determination to devote himself to fighting the disease of color prejudice. Gandhiji formed the Natal Indian Congress in 1894 to fight discrimination. In 1906, Gandhiji organized his first mass civil disobedience campaign, which he called Satyagraha, in reaction to the South African Transvaal government's new restrictions on the rights of Indians, including the refusal to recognize Hindu marriages. Throughout his political life, Gandhiji worked for the upliftment of poor and distressed people. Gandhiji became renowned worldwide for his satyagraha campaigns in support of the farmers, merchants, and workers. Satyagraha, firmness in truth, and Sarvodaya, welfare of all, are the core concepts of Mahatma Gandhi's political philosophy. Satyagraha became the alternative non-violent resistance, sole force of the oppressed against injustice. Gandhiji was a prolific writer. One of Gandhiji's earliest publications, Hindu Swaras, published in Gujarati in 1909, became the intellectual blueprint for India's independence movement. For decades, he edited several newspapers, including Harijan in Gujarati, in Hindi, and in English language, Indian Opinion while in South Africa, and Young India in English, and Navjivan, a Gujarati monthly, on his return to India. Gandhiji's complete works were published by an Indian government under the name The Collected Works of Mahatma Gandhi in 1960s. The writings comprise about 50,000 pages, published in about 100 volumes. Gandhiji influenced important leaders and political movements. Leaders of the civil rights movements in the United States, including Martin Luther King Jr., James Lawson, and James Bevel, drew from the writings of Gandhiji in the development of their own theories about nonviolence. The former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, was a follower of the nonviolent resistance philosophy of Gandhiji. In 1931, Albert Einstein exchanged written letters with Gandhiji and called him a role model for the generations to come, in a letter writing about him. Gandhiji explains his philosophy and a way of life in his autobiography, The Story of My Experiments with Truth. Gandhian ideology is a set of religious and social ideas adopted and developed by Mahatma Gandhi, first during his period in South Africa from 1893 to 1914, and later in India. Gandhian ideology emphasizes not on idealism, but on practical idealism. Gandhian philosophy is a double-edged weapon. Its objective is to transform the individual and society simultaneously in accordance with the principles of truth and nonviolence. Gandhian philosophy is not only simultaneously political, moral, and religious, it is also traditional and modern, simple and complex. Top 10 qualities of Mahatma Gandhiji, first and foremost, was nonviolence, faith in self, resistance and persistence, forgiveness, learning from mistakes, strength of character, love, don't resort to hatred, trustfulness, living in the present, take the first step and do it anyway. With this overview, now may I hand over next talk to the Honorable Director, NIT Silchar, Professor Shivaji Bandyopadhyay.
Yeah, good morning to my German friends, Professor Joseph and Christina, and good afternoon to my colleagues and dear friends at NIT Silchar who have joined this program. I will take time to Acha, I unmute myself. Yes. Yeah. 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 Naresh? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay. Good morning to my German friends, Professor Joseph and Dr. Christina. My colleagues, good afternoon to my colleagues at NIT Silchar and my dear PhD students and others who are present. So this symposium, the SPARC International Symposium on Mahatma Gandhi, has basically been planned initially by the government of India to commemorate the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, who is identified as the father of the nation. So the 150th birth anniversary started last year, 2nd October 2019, and the plan was to complete that celebration or till the 2nd October of 2020. So as part of the program, so it was advised by the government to have international symposium so that the message of Mahatma Gandhi can be shared with our academic colleagues across the globe as well. In our case, in our SPARC program, which is on multimodal machine translation, we found that there is a direct relevance between the principles or the wishes of Mahatma Gandhi and the machine translation activities that we do. We acknowledge that linguistic diversity exists in the society, be it India, be it Europe, be it the whole world. And in order to have the information sharing among all people of all languages across the globe, it is necessary that machine translation systems need to be developed. This has become more important in the current COVID scenario, when across the globe people are also sharing, investing their time on developing machine translation systems for low resource languages, because the necessity is that in a multilingual world, that is the core information, the basic information must reach, the quality information must reach each and every person in their own language, so that they can follow the same. So we are following the footsteps or following the advice. We have organized the SPARC International Symposium on Mahatma Gandhi and Linguistic Diversity. Gandhi's concept of Sarva Dharma Sambhava, that is equal respect for all religions, that goes far beyond the concept of multiculturalism. A positive and constructive multicultural approach which offers a way out of the present cultural, religious and ethnic conflicts and cleavages. That is what basically the Sarva Dharma Sambhava is the motto of the philosophy. And we understand that in today's world, no matter which part of the globe it is, the idea of this Sarva Dharma Sambhava, or equal respect for all religions, so that is so much relevant. And the concept goes to these multiple languages also. And we need to have, that is when we look into the picture, Mahatma Gandhi was a strong supporter of vernacular languages. And during those British period was when English was the official language of India. So obviously because of the that is the long history, so English is still used in the official activities, not only at the central level but also at the state level. But at the same time, the use of other languages, including Hindi, so that has gained momentum over the years. India is a diverse and multilingual nation with hundreds of dialects and languages. So in fact, the total linguistic scenario or the language scenario in India is so vast that even the language technology steps that we take, so as much as possible, even then a lot of languages will remain at the back. And linguistic diversity adds new shades of cultural richness also. And while some languages are still in use with substantial speakers, other local dialects are on the verge of extinction. So in the case of, say, language technology scenario, say there are languages for which, say, the language technology resources are okay, quite good in number. There are languages where, say, which are truly low resource languages, and there are languages where, say, for example, the number of speakers are actually quite minimal, sometimes going to the single digit number. And so they are the extinct languages. And so the government of India, in all its efforts, are taking different schemes to see that not only the well-resourced languages or the low-resource languages, but also the extinct languages also. So lot of care are taken so that they do not wither away. Now, before going into the linguistic scenario, we position ourselves, that is NIT Silchar, because we are an integral part, not only with respect to the SPARC project, this current one, P995 on multilingual machine translation, but we are in collaboration with University of Saarland and DFKI Saarbrücken also for a long time. And so on the northeast part of India, you can see the state of Assam, which is in green color shown, and say which is known mainly for its Assam tea all over the world. We are in the southern part of Assam, which is connected with the capital Delhi, with the Assam capital Guwahati, and with the nearest city of Kolkata. And if you look into the Silchar scenario, say it looks so green, and in the subsequent slides we can see that is we are so close to nature, but there is again, say, the environment diversity, I should say, that is compared to the other parts of the Silchar town, the place in the campus itself, that shows not only the linguistic diversity being a national institute, but also an environment diversity with the rest of the town as well. So this picture is basically, this is a photo of the beautiful guest house, and that welcomes you right at the beginning. And you can see at the back, that is part of the campus itself. And you can see that the solar powered street lamps, they have glown. Maybe the evening is coming when the picture was taken. As a regional engineering college, it started in 1967. The classes started in the current campus 10 years after, in 1977, 2nd of November. And the Regional Engineering College Silchar was upgraded to the National Institute of Technology Silchar in the year 2002. And it was identified as an institute of national importance in the year 2007, when the NIT Act came into being. When you look into the complete campus, so the current picture is basically showing not only the guest house at the left side or the main secretariat at the center, which is more or less in a white and gray color, but you can see the red-topped buildings, they are spread across, and 1 or 2 high-rise buildings at the very back. So it is a 625 acres green campus. It was earlier a tea garden. So normally a tea garden, when that becomes barren, so it has basically very little tea or the plantations. So that over the last 50 years or so, the current plantation that you can see on the picture, so that was man-made. So it has become a practice with the stakeholders at NIT Silchar, so that whenever the guests arrive, they plant their trees. Whenever the students join, they plant trees in their name. And when they pass out also, they again plant a tree. And in between, there are numerous occasions when the tree plantation goes on. And you can see the large number of water bodies. There are in fact 23 such water bodies in the campus itself that contributes to the temperature. When the outside is say hot, say minimum difference of 5 degrees centigrade temperature is there. This is the picture of, say, tree plantation with guests. So when last year, Professor Joseph and Madam Mary, they visited NIT Silchar, stayed with us for a long time. So they have planted trees with their name there, and the trees are still growing. And so obviously in some other occasion, I'll be taking the current situation of those trees, so how they are growing up. And I wish that when Christina will be able to make a visit, so a similar such tree plantation will be done by her in her name. This is a picture which was taken, say, around in last year, 2nd October, when we started celebrating the 150th years of celebrating the Mahatma. It was a solar ambassador workshop. So what was the idea? It was part of the Gandhi Global Solar Yatra. So that was promoted by one professor from IIT Bombay. The idea was that the solar power, which is in the hands of everyone, that is, which say by Gandhiji's parlance, we say that Swaraj, or that is, you have your own, you make your own destiny, and say power to every people. So obviously solar power giving access to that to each and every people in the local region. And that happened all over the globe. And Silchar, NIT Silchar was proud to be a part of it. On the top left side, you can see the school children. They are assembling. These are the school children in the local nearby villages, village schools. They are assembling the solar lamp kit. So with the support or advice of our students, so these school children, they are assembling it. And on the top right, you can see that is at the end of the day, with the solar lamp in their hand, they have assembled near our secretariat and waiting basically for the evening to come when they will grow their light. So in the student solar ambassador workshop, 500 school kids from the Borak Valley. Borak is basically the river in the nearby districts that is very close to NIT Silchar also. In Gandhi Global Solar Yatra, 500 students made 500 solar lamps to mark the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. And when evening dawned, so they switched on their solar lamp because after its assembly, it was also put on charge there. And you can see that is how bright it looks like. And these students, they took they were gifted those solar lamps. They took it to their house because for many of them, regular electricity is basically not something which is so common. So the idea was that they will energize these solar lamps during the day period and during evening so that they can do their study. Now, before proceeding, we just give a brief idea that in terms of the national and international ranking where NIT Silchar stands today. Now, in terms of national ranking for engineering colleges, we are in the 46th position. In the overall category, we are in the 94th position. Now, in National Institutional Ranking Framework 2020. In the Innovation Ranking Framework, we are in the rank band of 11 to 25 because we put focus on the research and innovation at the same time. And in the Times Higher Education World University Ranking 2021, for the first time, we are placed in the 801 to 1000 rank. And 19th place in India. And there are some other ranking informations also, which some newspaper houses, they basically organized among engineering colleges. But we are not going into details of it. And at this point, I shared that whenever you talk about ranking, it is not the number or the rank that you are getting. It is basically that helps us to assess our situation, our strengths, what are our weaknesses also, what are the opportunities that lie ahead of us, and what are the challenges that we need to face together. So through this SWOT analysis, we are basically progressing, and all our endeavors are focused towards that activity. Now, coming to our discussions on the diversity in Indian language families. So there are 22 scheduled languages in India. And what we mean by scheduled languages is that these languages, they are present in the 8th schedule of Indian Constitution. There are 22 such languages, and the idea is that the government of India, that the central government will provide equal support to all these 22 languages. The Indian language families, they include the Indo-European, to which belongs the Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, Dravidian group of languages which are mostly spoken in the southern part of India, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, etc. The Austroasiatic, mainly by people from the northeast part of India, Khasi, Jayantia, etc. Sino-Tibetan, again, mainly in the northeast part of India, Manipuri, Bodo, Mizo, among other languages. And among these, obviously, there is our team, and myself also have worked on Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, then I think Telugu also we have worked, then Manipuri. So Doren, in fact, did his PhD in the Manipuri language technology with me. And Mizo is something what Partho Pakre is currently doing with his students. And there are some Himalayan languages which are remaining unclassified. Some of the important NLP tasks, and these are sometimes basic, because the alphabet scenario, it is not the Roman script. So that means that has a different script, that is the Dravidian script or the Devanagari script. Besides that, there are other scripts also. And each script, there are say different set of characters, different set of, that is the part of speech set. That is basically, there are some basic part of speech set is similar, but when you go into further classification, so the part of speech tag set is basically different. So there are works that is whenever people have to do work in a language, so they have to start from the part of speech tagging. Named entity recognition, against that advantage of English that named entities will start with a capital letter, so that advantage is not there. Then parsing, machine translation, opinion mining, sentiment analysis, information retrieval systems, question answering systems, text summarization, textual entailment, and so on and so forth. The types of resources that are available for some of the Indian languages for NLP tasks, that includes WordNet also. For example, the Hindi and the Marathi WordNet are well populated, and the WordNet in some other important Indian languages, including Bengali. So some projects, development projects have been carried out, and these are available. But obviously, there is WordNet for those languages are not up to that level in terms of its coverage, we can say. Then text corpora, monolingual as well as comparable parallel text corpus, annotated text corpora, POS tagged and sentiment tagged corpus. Then NLP tools, simple things like morphological analyzer, POS tagger, Indic, NLP library, etc. Now, most of the resources for Indian languages for various NLP tasks, you can get, say, IIT Bombay, the Center for Indian Language Technology, that is a proliferation of resources because they have been doing the work for a long time. Indian Institute of Information Technology, Hyderabad is also IIIT Hyderabad is another institute whose Linguistic Technology Research Center is working in various Indian languages for a long time, and they also collect a lot of resources. The technology development for Indian languages of the TDIL program by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, and then the Linguistic Data Consortium for Indian languages housed inside the CIIL Mysore. So that is also stores a good collection of Indian language corpora. Some of the NLP work groups which work in India, one is obviously IIT Bombay, then IIT Guwahati, Center for Linguistic Science and Technology. In Jadavpur University, when I was there, we formed a team, but the works are still continuing there. Then IIIT Hyderabad, Language Technologies Research Center. At NIT Silchar, we have developed the Center for Natural Language Processing also, what we term as the CNLP, and which, say, was open when Professor Joseph visited NIT Silchar last year. Now, some of the works. So we'll make our coverage in this way. We'll point to some of the works which are in Indian languages, some of which have appeared in the low resource machine translation workshops or programs as well. Here are two papers which appeared in the low resource MT 2019, the second workshop, which happened as part of MT Summit 8. So one was the multilingual, multimodal machine translation for Dravidian languages, utilizing phonetic transcription. Another was the factored neural machine translation that was for English and Bhojpuri, English and Magahi, and English and Sindhi. In the third workshop on technologies for MT for low resource languages, which will be held in the December this year. So obviously we do not yet know that is which Indian language works have found their presence there, but some shared task on zero-shot NMT approach. So that has been designed. So the zero-shot approach in neural MT or NMT to build MT systems where parallel corpora are small or even non-existent. So that becomes relevant for the low resource languages. However, the performance of zero-shot NMT, and again the zero-shot NMT came out from the Google basically. So the performance is low compared to the pivot MT. That is where you have a third language. That is if you have two language pairs in which the parallel corpora is not that much available. But if you have a third language and in between That is the if you look into the pair of these languages, so good amount of the parallel corpora are present. Then that is used as a pivot language and using that pivot mechanism. So that is pivot empty is another way. But the performance of pivot empty is better than the zero shot NMT because in the zero shot NMT, the situation is the same. We do not have adequate parallel corpus in the two source and the target language. But instead of going for the pivot empty, actually we are taking help of whatever other parallel corpora might be present in the collection. And the shared task is for the zero shot NMT systems for Hindi, Bhojpuri, the languages which are very close to each other. Hindi, Magahi, say again some close languages, but Russian and Hindi, they are wide, say some distant languages. So obviously we'll be eager to find out that is the zero shot NMT, how that performs for close pair of languages or say for distinct pair of languages at the same time. Now, when you look into the current scenario in the NLP activities, so when say for example we started our work, it was mostly on the text domain. Now thereafter it transcended into the multimodal NLP because the communication across people not only are through the text, but that is also through speech also and through images and the video. So a new dimension of the traditional text-based analysis of text, that is the multimodal NLP, that includes other modalities such as audio and the visual data. And in fact, in our current SPARC project, our task is basically on the multimodal machine translation. Because we see that in a news broadcasting, for example, we have the written text which appears in the printed newspaper. If we look into the printed newspaper, we have some say the static images along with the captions. So that adds to the translation scenario. If we look into the television broadcast of those newses, that as a say additional corpus, we'll have the video, we'll have the speech track, and we'll have the maybe the caption in other languages at the same time. So in order to resolve the ambiguities in such a situation, say keeping in mind the newspaper story scenario, so that becomes a perfect test bed for multimodal NLP. And by that we mean multimodal machine translation as well as multimodal sentiment analysis at the same time, because sentiments obviously are multimodal in nature. People are also working on the multimodal machine translation and the cross-lingual image description, because image captioning and the video captioning, these are related set of words which say not only our team at NIT Silchar they are carrying out, but across the globe as well as in Zarbrook, and also I understand people are doing it. That is a target language description that needs to be generated for an image with additional cues from source language descriptions of the same image. Again, some glimpses where the language technology activities is founding a place there in the workshop on Asian translation, what 2020. So some things like say Hindi to English, multilingual, multi-domain evaluation task. Then some Indic task like Odia to English. Some new corpus in Praha. In Czech Republic, people have developed some corpus and they are floating it. Then Indic multilingual evaluation task, say Bengali, Hindi, Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati to English. And multimodal English to Hindi. That is where the image captioning task is having its significance basically. So we see that all over the world, not only in the Asian part, but across the globe also, people are having more and more interest in language technology activities in Indian languages. Current trends in NLP activities in India as well as elsewhere, a customer support chatbot, a language identifier, and machine learning powered autocomplete feature, a predictive text generator, a social media monitor, hate speech and offensive content identification, fake news detection, and obviously machine translation and other traditional applications. In India, there is a national translation mission which originated from the Prime Minister of India's office and is part of the government's plan to remove language barriers in India. The Natural Language Translation Mission is referred to as Bahu Bhashak, that will be focusing on Indian language technology development with its various components like automatic speech recognition, will be coordinated by IIT Madras, text-to-speech IIT Madras, text-to-text machine translation, IIIT Hyderabad, IIT Bombay, and CDAC, and optical character recognition, because from written text, because lot of text are in the written format, both current and the old ones also, IISc Bangalore. The main objective of Bahu Bhashak is to have Indian language technology systems and products deployed in the field with the help of startups. The coordinating institutes will provide technical and research support for the deployment of these technologies through startups. This National Translation Mission, the key activities will be developing scientific and technical terminology in all the 22 languages of the 8th schedule. Then translator education, running short-term training programs, because to have the quality translation, even if the machine translation systems are developed across the various languages, we need the post-editing task. And for the post-editing, the help of the human translators are obviously important. Then, as part of the translator education, creating a course for translators as a part of the language, teaching program, developing specialized courses in translation technology and related areas, fellowship programs, encouraging research projects. Number 3, information dissemination. Number 4, promotion and dissemination of good quality translation. Number 5, promotion of machine translation and machine-aided translation between English and Indian languages, one Indian language and another Indian languages, between Indian languages and major world languages. In fact, when we worked with other language technology teams in India, that is, which was a precursor to this National Translation Mission, we were part of this English to Indian language task and Indian language to Indian languages task as well. The 6th objective of National Translation Mission is the creation of high-quality translation tools such as dictionaries, thesauri, word finders, online lookups, and the sourcing software for translation, memory, WordNet, etc. And also to explore if these facilities of lookup could be made available in newer and wider platforms such as mobile technology. Now, multimodal machine translation for low-resource Indian languages. This example we have already shown. That is multilingual, multimodal machine translation for Dravidian languages, utilizing phonetic transcription that appeared in 2019 LORES MT workshop. The Dravidian languages involved were Kannada, Malayalam, and Tamil. And for feature extraction from the multimodal, that is the images, it has that 19-layer VGG 19 CNN as the feature extraction system. Then RNN model using the OpenNMT toolkit. Multilingual, one-to-many and many-to-one approach, and utilizing phonetic transcription and the byte pair encoding word segmentation approach. Multimodal MT for low-resource Indian languages. Another citation we find as multimodal neural machine translation for low-resource language pairs using synthetic data. It appeared in the proceedings of the workshop on deep learning approaches for low-resource NLP. So Hindi and the English, that was the pair. And it again used the VGG19 CNN for feature extraction, and the bidirectional RNN model as well. These work on multilingual neural machine translation involving Indian languages. So that appeared in the Wilder 5th workshop on Indian language data, resources and evaluation. This is a series workshop that is taking place in LREC 2020 this year, but for the last 5 years. And a research group, which a group of computational linguists from India who are say in the task of developing linguistic resources, and say from JNU, Delhi, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and some other institutes across the country. They work on this organizing this workshop on Indian language data. So that is a generic source and generic pointer also to identify or to understand that is how the resource generation in Indian languages are going on. The languages which are considered in this work, recent work, are Sindhi, Magahi, Bhojpuri, Hindi, transformer model for machine translation, and byte pair encoding word segmentation approach. In 2018, another system was submitted, transformer-based multilingual English neural machine translation system, and that was part of the 32nd Pacific Asia Conference on Language, Information and Computation, 5th workshop on Asian translation. The languages involved are Bengali, Hindi, Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, Urdu, and Sinhalese also. Though Sinhalese is not so-called Indian language, and it is spoken in Sri Lanka, the neighboring country of India. And the system includes transformer model and the byte pair encoding word segmentation approach as well. People have started working on the BART model involving Indian languages also, pre-trained word embedding. So in the work on A Passage to India, pre-trained word embeddings for Indian languages, which is mainly done by the IIT Bombay team, and that appeared in the LREC 2021 workshop, first joint SLTU and CCURL workshop. According to the paper, the BART model is implemented in 14 Indian languages, namely Hindi, Bengali, Telugu, Tamil, Nepali, Sanskrit, Marathi, Punjabi, Malayalam, Gujarati, Konkani, Oriya, Kannada, and Assamese. But I understand that the resource, the level of resource in these BART models, say among them, say Hindi are obviously the most populated one. The resource link that they have mentioned, at present the BART model is not available there, but we understand that obviously because that mentioned in the LREC 2020 also, so it might be available very soon. Now my own NLP team, say to which fortunately Dorian also, that is when he did his PhD with me at Jadavpur University, he was there, and Partho Pakre, who is another colleague of mine who has joined today's program. So these were some of the R&D projects in NLP that we did earlier. So one was an advanced platform for question answering system funded by CEFIPRA. That was with Professor Saint-Dizier at IRIT Toulouse. Then sentiment analysis, where AI meets psychology. That was funded by DST and the Japan Science and Technology. Worked with Professor Manabu Okumura of Tokyo Institute of Technology. Then answer validation using through textual entailment. That was funded by DST and the Mexican counterpart, and Professor Alexander Gelbuk from Mexico was there. And some Indian language projects that we are part of, cross-lingual information access. We worked with IIT Bombay. Then English to Indian languages machine translation, Indian language to Indian languages machine translation, then development of dependency tree bank for Indian languages. We were part there. In the current SPARC project, so very soon it is maybe going to be over by say mid next year, and we have some more deliverables to make also. And currently, along with the SPARC, 2 more R&D projects we are carrying out at NIT Silchar. One is deep summarization evaluation with CNRS in France. So Dr. Partho Pakre and myself, he is the PI, myself is the co-PI. And another one is with the ASEAN country, with Malaysia and Indonesia. That is on a health chatbot, computer-aided recommendation engine for the health diagnostics, basically. So thank you at the end. So the target was basically to portray, that is on Mahatma Gandhi's ideals, that the linguistic diversity in India and the areas where we and that is at NIT Silchar we are working, and the work that is being carried out by University of Saarland at Saarbrücken along with the DFKI Saarbrücken. So our works on the multilingual scenario. So that takes care of the multilingual or the linguistic diversity in India. And I understand that the presentations from Professor Joseph and Dr. Christina will also focus on the linguistic diversity in the European parlance. And I understand that is what are the technology solutions that they are employing on. So that we will be able to know. So that our collaborations will not only end or over with the SPARC project, but we can understand that this is basically just the beginning, and we can continue our development further. Thank you once again.
Okay, so there was a very resourceful talk from Honorable Director NIT Silchar, Professor Sivaji Bandyopadhyay. Now may I request Professor Dr. Joseph Ganavit to share his thought on this symposium.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my screen to be shared. Just please bear with me.
Okay.
I have a problem here in that my browser, which is Firefox, tells me it cannot share. Yeah. So I'm clicking on it, and it asks me. Yeah, it asks me present whole screen or a window. So let me pick whole screen, and it says it cannot share. That is strange. Maybe what we'll do is the following. Maybe we can reverse the order of presentations. I don't know whether Christina might be ready to share, and I'll log out and log in again, and then I do the last presentation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it might just be something with the browser permissions. Yeah. Should we do that?
It's okay.
So
yeah,
it's okay.
Christina, would you go?
Yeah.
Christina, would you go ahead, and then I'll try to log out again, log in again, and see whether I can share.
Sure. I'm also with Firefox. I hope I can do it.
Yeah, I don't know. We did a dry run and it worked fine, but so apologies for this.
Well, no issues, because the thing is that over email this can be shared with us, and it can be shared and displayed from our side. and you can just advise. Yeah, I think.
Okay,
Okay,
can
so
you
I go
see,
out and go in again.
can you see my screen now? So you should be seeing yourself. Sorry?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Then full screen, can you make it full screen? Oh, it's okay.
It should be full screen now. If it's not,
It is okay, fine.
okay, good, because otherwise I'm doing something wrong that I don't know what it is.
Okay, please.
Okay, then first of all, I want to thank you for the organization of the symposium and for inviting us to do this talk, and also for all the people that I'm seeing that is connecting now and is going to listen to us. So what I intend to do in this presentation, that it's called Some Aspects of Linguistic Diversity in Europe and Africa, is mainly to summarize two of the projects that we are making here in Germany, in Saarland University and FKI, and relate a bit these projects to the diversity of languages that are in Europe and Africa, and the quality of the linguistic resources that we have for all of them. So the first thing that I like to do is a very brief introduction to language diversity and some concepts that I will be using later. But you already have listened a lot of what you are doing in India in the previous talk, so this is just a small comparison with what's happening in Europe and Africa. And then I will summarize, as I said, one of the projects that we're doing in Europe and one of the projects that we are doing for African languages. So first, in this introduction, just I want to give you some numbers about language diversity in the world. So even if it's not clear, the definition of what is a language and what is not, what is a dialect, what is a variant, there are estimations that says that we have more than 7,000 languages in the world that are divided in around 140 language families. Of course, not all the languages and not all the language families are equally distributed around the world, and we can say that only 6 of these families account for 2/3 of all the languages in the world, and that these languages are covering almost 6 parts of the population in the world. So there are lots of languages with a lot of speakers and a lot of population, but also lots of languages which have very few speakers. All these numbers and the things that I will be saying in the talk are extracted from mainly these 3 sites that are really very nice and very descriptive. So if you're interested in the topic, you can explore the Ethnologue site. Glottolog and Linguistic Max have very specific statistics about how languages are divided in the world. So this is just some reference that I will be using in general. Some concepts that I would like to relate here to explain the situation in Europe, in Africa, is how is language diversity affecting in these 2 regions. The number of endangered languages and the number of healthy languages that we have in the 2 regions, and if this can be related to the density of population that have the 2 regions. And also a very important thing for the language resources that we are talking about here is the kind of what we could call the digital richness of the two regions. This is a map of the endangered languages that there are currently in the world. And you see that this is not equally distributed. So if you see the region of Europe and the region that we have more on the left in the States and in Canada, there is few endangered languages that are homogeneously distributed, but then we see some what we could say hotspots where there are really lots of languages that are in danger of extinguishing. These are 3 hotspots. Can we say it's in Central America and the South America? There are lots of them. Also in Africa, the sub-Saharan Africa has also a very dense part with a lot of endangered languages. And then in Southeast and the south of Asia, we have also another region with a lot of endangered languages. So we see that the situation of languages is very diverse across the world. There are very diverse regions. And this does not necessarily correlate with the population density. So it's not that there is a clear correlation between we have a lot of population, we have a lot of languages. Since we have a lot of languages, some of them are in danger of extinction. No, there is not a clear correlation. So things are not that easy. And there might be very different reasons why a language is healthy or not. Just for illustration, if I overplot here, the density of population in the world, we see, for instance, that Europe and Africa, the 2 regions that I wanted to compare, have a high density of population. But if you look at the East, we see, for instance, that India seems to have even a higher population, and the number of languages was higher than in Europe, but lower than in Africa. So it seems that it's not highly correlated. Yeah, you can see if I go back and forth in the slides, you can see this difference here. So regarding the 2 projects that I wanted to explain, you see that these 2 projects are really very different, but they are also very different because the realities in the 2 zones are very different. And both of them, Europe and the north part of the sub-Saharan Africa, that is the second project I talk about, have a relatively high population density. But in one case, Europe has a relatively or a comparatively low language diversity. I will show some numbers later on, especially with respect to Africa, which is really a continent with really high language diversity. But one of the main differences is that while Europe is a digitally, we could call digitally rich region, this part of Africa is a digitally poor region. So even if we have a language that really has a lot of speakers and it's a healthy language in general, with the respect of the resources that we have to create language technology, it's really poor, that language. So we cannot develop technologies with the same quality nowadays that we can develop for the other languages. And having said that, I would like to start with one project related to machine translation for European languages. This is just a zoom of the plot that I showed you before of the languages in Europe. So how is language diversity in Europe? Well, Europe has around 130 languages, and all the languages that are official in a country are also official for the European Union. That means that the European Union has nowadays 24 official languages that cover all the population. So all the population understands these 24 languages. But besides this, there are like 80, 100, the number is not clear, that are also spoken by a great amount of people, so around 40 million citizens. Lots of these languages are minority languages with few speakers because of several reasons, because they are living with a very powerful language and there is no need for it anymore, or because they are close to a border, or whatever reasons. But with these 24 official languages, the communication inside Europe should be covered. And this is the background for this project. Let me explain a bit how works Europe for those of it that are not familiar with it. So yeah, we do have this union of countries, but also there is a common legislation for all the European Union. And the presidency of this European Union is taking turns, has a rotatory presidency, where each 6 months the presidency of the European Union goes to a different country. And starting from July the 1st, this presidency went into Germany. So now Germany is the one that is like coordinating the system. And during the last presidencies, one of the tasks that the leading country is doing is creating official translation engines, so that these engines are available to the public and everyone can use it to share the information and be able to have everything in his own language. So this was the goal of the project. And we were asked, well, we and other partners, we'll see in a minute, we were asked to create translation between all the 24 official languages in the European Union. Since the presidency is in the German side, so the idea is that German can be used for everything as the vehicle language, but then there are especially good translation from German and into German during this presidency. And as a secondary goal, the idea is that also make visible to the public that these technologies need language resources, that this is artificial intelligence what is behind, and this is important to make it progress. And also make things that, make notice that this technology that is being used now is being done in German. So which are the partners? We at the FKI are leading this project now, and we are the coordinators. And then we, together with another company called Tilde, are in charge of making the translation engines. So these engines are the ones that I said that are specifically designed to be very good translating into and from Germany, since it's the vehicle language here. But we need to cover these 24 per 24 languages. So it's really a huge amount of language pairs, and not all of them are being developed specifically for this project. So we also use already existing technologies by DeepL and e-translation. So together we are covering all the language pairs. For those who had a background on machine translation, I just explain a bit the main architecture behind the systems. So what we are doing, at least at the FKI, its company has its own architectures. What we are building is neural machine translation systems that are bidirectional. So the same system is translating into and from Germany for a given language. So we have German, French, French, English together, German, French, French, German together, German, Spanish, Spanish, French together, and so on. The architecture is a transforming big architecture. And a part of the work was to adapt this system to the domain it was supposed to translate. So the translator is open to the public, so everyone can translate the domain that they want, but also is used by the government to translate the official documents. So a part of the work was doing some data selection, generation of data, even that we are doing back translation for training the system and crawling the web to get domain-specific text. And domain adapting here means a lot of different things, because of course in the government they deal with very different topics. So we need to crawl for COVID data that was just a domain that just appeared when we started the project, but also to general politics or to energy or to really very different topics. And then these translator engines are integrated in different systems. So there is a public web page where people can translate raw text, but also upload documents or translate web pages as a whole. It's also integrated in CAT tools so that it can be used as a plugin, and we have our system there, or in web translation. So yeah, I had some slides here showing the system, but maybe since everything seems to be working properly, what I can do is go to the web page and show you the system there. So tell me if you can still see what I'm showing you. So this is the presidency translation web page. This is the one that is public to everyone, and you see here all the source languages that there are. So there are the 24 languages. Let me just move to English. And here is the target language where you can see again all the 24 languages. You can choose different providers here. You can see DeepL, e-translation tilde, and this is a bad example because this is not ours here. Let me go to another language, I don't know, Spanish, because this was native language. So we can go also to Spanish to German, and here you can use our system or DeepL, for instance. So with the combining of the partners, you can have translator on all the languages. And then we have several functionalities, so you can just type here, but you can also upload one of your files, so you can translate a docx, a PowerPoint, or whatever file you like, and then you will have the translation here. Another thing that I can show you is the official webpage of the European presidency. So yeah, let me do again the same and move to English. So this is the official webpage where the European Union puts all the information of the presidency, what's going on in Europe, the most popular services, the news that are appearing, and then the translator of the government are doing this webpage in English, German, and French. But then, since we need this communication with the 24 languages, you can see here that we have all the other languages with a sign here. That means that you can get this web page with machine translation, and the machine translation that it used here is our system, the one that I have described before. Let me go again for Spanish, for instance, and you see that they say that, yeah, now we are translating the web page into Spanish. And yeah, you see that it is getting translated as soon online. So this is still in English, and at some point, yeah, now it changes to Spanish. So it's being translated online. Okay, I will go back again to the slides. So we have seen this now, and maybe it's relevant to this symposium to see which languages are more represented. So how is the language diversity in Europe affecting that? So what we are doing is we are monitoring the translation that people is doing in time. So each month we have our report of how many words are being translated. This is the numbers that we got in August, and for the top 30 for the top 30 language pairs, that the ones that are more used. And as expected, all the language pairs involve either German or English. So yeah, German is the home language, let's say. So a lot of people in Germany using that. And also English is we could say is in fact, the vehicular language in Europe. So what everyone understands is English. So there is a lot of translation into or from English and into or from language. There is a kind of layer here, English-Croatian this month, that we don't really know what happens because Croatian is not really one of the big languages with a lot of speakers, but this month it seems that way they were really very active. Then I can give you similar numbers for this widget that can be integrated into web pages. The one integrated into this official Euro 2020 webpage, and we see that people is mostly translated in the languages with most speakers in Europe. So The top one is Spanish, but then we have also Italian and Portuguese very close. So people is interested in translating into their languages, and the more speakers they have, the more hits that we get for that languages. The smallest languages here in the queue, we see Irish or Maltese, that are small regions with less speakers. Other things that are done with this translator, so yeah, also as I said, the people in the government is using this translator engine, so that for them to use it, it's integrated also in a CAT tool that they use, this SDL Trados here, and also in several online tools. It can be also integrated in this tool, so that if you upload your Excel, PowerPoint, or Word document, you can just have in your CAT tool the translation given by our engines here. So more numbers of usage of this in August. We see, yeah, in total this month there had been like 30 million words translated, together with putting everything together. The less usage is done with this plugin for Trados, because yeah, this is only used by real translators working in the ministry. But then the public can use it for their own translations, and we see that more or less there is the same usage for document translation and for text translation, about 3 million words each this month. And then people who's interested in translating the full web page of the presidency translation, yeah, we have a higher input here, like 7 million words were translated using this widget. And this is what I wanted to show for the European project. If you are interested in knowing more about the details of the engine or whatever, please just ask me the questions or either now or at the end of the talk, as you prefer. But I'm happy to explain also how the engines work. But now I want to spend some minutes also explaining the other project that we have for African language. And this is a very different project also because the reality of the languages there is very different to the reality of the languages that we have in Europe. And I want to thank to three colleagues here in the group that come from Nigeria and Ghana, so we could have from first hand some ideas and some impressions of how the language works, and really, so I can explain to you some things that I know because they explained them to me. So just to remind what we have seen at the beginning, this is a zoom into Africa from the low resource languages that we have there. And as I've said, we have people from Nigeria here. I'm not sure you can see my pointer, but we have Nigeria here and Ghana here. So this is the zone that we are exploring in the project, a zone with really lots of languages and lots of them in danger of extinction. So Africa is really different to Europe in this sense. In Africa, the language diversity is really high. There is the estimations say that there are between 1,500 and 2,000 languages in Africa. And if you remember at the beginning, I told you that there are about 7,000 languages in the world. So this is almost a third of the languages that are spoken in the world and are in Africa. If we do the same as in Europe, let's take the official language in its country and see how many official languages we have there. There are 28, and I can say that 11 of them are in South Africa. So yeah, the representation of official languages is really very small in proportion of the languages that they have. And sometimes official languages is languages such as French, English, or Portuguese, just because of the old colonies. But it's not really the language that is spoken by most of the speakers. As extreme example, I can say that Nigeria, only this country, has more than 500 languages. So it's really a highly diverse country. And you have lots of languages, and lots of them are in danger of extinction. At least like 400, 300 more for 40 here. So there are a lot of languages with few resources. So in this case, could one build an equivalent an African presidency translation? Okay, we have more or less the same number of official languages. Then maybe this is not the best languages, but if we select the languages that are spoken by a high proportion of population, we have that these languages here: Arabic, Somali, Berber, Amharic, Oromo, Igbo, Swahili, Hausa, Manding, Fulani, and Yoruba could cover most of Africa. They are spoken by tens of millions of people. So in principle, this could be a good selection of languages to facilitate the communication between the African countries. But it's not as easy as in Europe. Some of these languages, even if they are spoken by tens of millions of people, they are really in digital danger. And that means that they don't have enough digital content to be able to build high quality language technologies. And this is something similar to what we have seen in the presentation before for the Indian languages, that some of them really have lots of speakers, but they have few resources. And one of the things that we wanted to do in this work is to analyze how the resources that we have for these African languages are really affecting the quality of the language technologies. Are they good enough to develop good technologies here? So nowadays, in this deep learning world where everything is done with a neural network, we have especially two components that give very good quality results. So one of them is having word embeddings for a language, that's word-to-vec like representations, and the other one is contextual representation, that it's bird-like representations. And then if one have basic good representation with these word-to-vec and bird systems, one can use transfer learning to adapt to different tasks or even to closed languages. So, and these resources are made available to the community. They are pre-trained word embeddings mainly by Facebook and Google that are both back-to-back similar or bird-like. So what we have done here is analyze these embeddings, try to see how they perform for a big language as Yoruba, and we have seen that it has lots of speakers, and for a smaller language such as Twi, that it's a language that is spoken in Ghana. So the resources that we have for these languages are good enough, or we are far from what we should be having. The first thing that we did is try to collect all the corpora that we could for Yoruba and for Twi. For Yoruba, we had really more corpora. For Twi, it was difficult. It's quite difficult to get written text in this language. And we also had these native speakers of these languages that look at the corpora and quantify the quality. And we see that for Yoruba, here in the right, you can see that it's a lot of times the word clean and only 3 times at the end it's noisy. For Twi, really only the Bible was clean enough and all the remaining data is noisy. One thing that I miss here is that I should have put also the number that the corpora that we could have extracted in English. You'll see that even if we have really lots of corpus here in Yoruba, the amount of tokens that we have, that it's less than 13 million tokens, is really small as compared to English. And yeah, and the same with Twi. Another remark is that, yeah, both of the languages have the standard corpus that you can have in several languages, like it's the Bible, Wikipedia, and this Jehovah's corpus. But for instance, one observation is that Wikipedia for these languages is a noisy corpus. So it has a mixture of different languages. The diacritics, when needed, are not used properly. So for other languages, like the ones that I can say are the European one, when Wikipedia is always considered a clean corpus, when we go to this African corpus, we see that the corpus is really noisy. And this is affecting the language resources that we can generate. If we look at the quality of the pre-trained models that are now available, this is the quality of the word embeddings that Facebook is giving to the community that you can freely download. We look at how this model can perform a similarity task, and then how this correlates with the human evaluation that a human would do on this similarity. As a comparison, I would say that for the test set that we are using here and for the data that is publicly available for English, so the same pre-trained embeddings for English, we would have a Spearman correlation, that the second column here would be higher than 0.8. If we use the pre-trained embeddings for Twi and for Yoruba, the pre-trained embeddings we have a low quality, close to 0.1. So really, the amount of data and the quality of data is not good enough to have meaningful results. With all the corpus that we selected, and also with some modification to standard word-to-vec architectures that take more into account the nature of the language itself, we managed to improve the quality of the embedding. So now we could be, curating data, extracting more data, changing the model, and with all of this, we were able to be close to 0.5 in this evaluation, but still this is half of the quality that we are getting for English without doing nothing in special, just taking all the data as it is. So yeah, as you see, the quality is quite far from the big languages that we were talking about, like English or German before. And we did a similar thing with BERT embeddings, and this is more or less the same conclusion. When you use the pre-trained BERT embeddings without doing nothing, you can identify name entities with a precision of 27%. You need to collect more data and work a lot to be able to get higher scores. So yeah, with quite a lot of work, we were able to get embeddings, BERT embeddings that can do this task with even a 60% of accuracy, where for English we will be close to 90%, for instance. So we need to work a lot. We can improve the results, but we are still far from the results that we get with richer languages. This is one of the experiments. We are working on more things on African languages, for instance, language identification, when we are trying to distinguish between 40 African languages, the one with more resources. And in this case, the basic recourse is the Bible, because it's the one that it's clean data for all of them. There are also several initiatives that want to extract parallel sentences. And yeah, there are initiatives that have people from these African languages just translating by hand sentences so that they can be used for training as good as possible machine translation engines. And here at DIFCAE, we also had recently a collaboration with the GIS community. They have a project that it's called Fair Forwards Project, Artificial Intelligence for All, where they are trying to promote language technologies, not only in African countries, but also in India, for instance. So yeah, there is an interest here to be able to disseminate the projects that we are doing in Europe and be able to see if we can compare that to the situation in India and Africa, and try to do some collaborations there. And this is what I wanted to explain about the work that we are doing here. not sure I've talked too much, but if you have any questions and there is time, I will be happy to answer. Let me go back to see you.
Yeah, so thanks, Christina, for such a nice and relevant talk, I should say.
Thanks.
Yeah, so if there are any questions from anyone, fine. Otherwise, we'll move on to the last talk of today's symposium. Your voice is not audible.
Prof. Joseph, your mic is mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, I do it without this. Okay, I tried to grab the screen. And can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's coming.
Oh, great, excellent. Okay, so let me present. Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody in India, and it's just about after lunchtime here in Germany, and hi to all my German colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I very much enjoyed the presentations of Sivaji and Doran and Christina, and I'm going to stay within. So Christina's presentation focused very much on data and availability of data and the quality of data, and I'm going to kind of like continue with that topic with one of the projects that we run at DFKI here for the European Commission, and this is called the European Language Resource Coordination. It's also to do with linguistic diversity and focuses on the official languages of the EU. But before we do that, I just wanted to give you an idea about where we are in Germany. I hadn't prepared this. I just did this while Sivaji was preparing. So we're at the University of Saarland and in Saarbrücken, and it's a small place. It's not even on the map. I don't know if you can see my mouse. This is kind of like where Saarbrücken is. It's close to Luxembourg, and it's a small city. And as I say, it's so small, it's not even on the map of Germany here, which only lists the larger cities. Some of you know that Germany is made up of a collection of federal states. And I don't know exactly kind of like where Saarland University ranks in the list of international universities, but I can say safely that it's the best university in the federal state of Saarland. But I have to say it's also the worst university in the federal state of Saarland. And the reason for that is the only one. Then what I did, just to give you some idea, is like, this was Google Maps. And I asked Google Maps to give me directions from Saarbrücken to Silchar all the way. And it wasn't quite able to do this because I think it's too long, but here you get some idea about, where we are here in Germany in the Midwest, very, very close to France, and where this is located with respect to Silchar. Okay, so let me get to the talk, and I try to be quick because some of the things that have been discussed by Christina and by Sivaji and by Doran, I think make some of the slides that are prepared superfluous. So the talk that I want to present is structured into some very general context, and then I'm going to zoom in on this project, this ELRC. This is the European Language Resource Coordination. I give you a little bit of background to the project. I go through the objectives. I go to take a look at the activities, at the achievements, at the challenges, and finally, kind of like what we're planning to do next. So the general context, and I'm going to be really, really fast here because, as I said, I think a lot of my previous speakers have covered the relevant material already really, really well. So you all know that we use language to do pretty much everything. We encode information, we transmit it, we share it, We manipulate information, also in a good way, not just in a bad way. We explain ourselves, we express ourselves. We use language to convince others, to agree with them, to rebut them, to interact with others in our environment. Language is kind of like a social glue, and it's really important. You know, one reasons where, or one indication where you can see that language is important is that our laws and constitution. Yeah.
Sir, can you?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Yes, yeah.
say again, please. Some parts of the world. Okay. How much do you see? Okay. So maybe I. Okay. No, is this better? Okay, so we'll try and do it like this. Okay, and that's better. That's better than going into presentation mode. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so yeah, and just to continue, like we use language in science and commerce, we use it to store knowledge, to pass it on to the next generation for pleasure, creativity, aesthetic enjoyment. We record our histories in language, and we use language. I think it's fair to say we use languages as core part of our identities. It might even distinguish us from other species, and some people speculate whether there's a deep relationship between language and thought. So it's clear that we do pretty much everything in language. We're kind of like embedded in a sea of language. And you all know, especially those who are working in natural language processing or who have a linguistic background, that languages are very elegant, efficient, and flexible, but also very, very complex, and in the sense that one word may mean many things, that one meaning, maybe it's possible to express one meaning with many different words. Meaning depends on context. We have literal and figurative language, ambiguity, etc. And here's just some examples of some funny examples of what makes language really, really complex. So if you look at this one here, red tape holds up new bridges. This can mean that, you know, physically, like red tape holds up the bridges that are so badly constructed that you need the red tape to fix them. But it could also mean that the bureaucracy, the metaphorical meaning of red tape, is holding up the bridges. Just an indication of how complex language is. But the problem is, of course, there are many, many languages. There's not just one. What you see here is a picture of Europe that was taken a couple of years ago. I think it's from 2014. And this color codes the languages of tweets that come from different parts of Europe. And you can see here's Germany, here's France, here's the Netherlands, parts of Belgium. And you can see that, of course, the language areas, they don't follow geographical boundaries or political boundaries, like in, for example, Belgium. You have many people that speak French, many people that speak Dutch, some people speak German in Belgium, etc. And you can also see that, you know, these languages are not just European languages, because Europe is a very high immigration, very colorful continent, and very diverse. So we have Vietnamese, we have Thai, we have Afrikaans, etc., in significant numbers to show up in tweets in Europe. And of course, you're no stranger to that situation. India has 22 official languages, and here you can see some of them, and many, many more languages that are not official languages, but that might be spoken by sizable numbers of speakers. And our colleagues at Ethnologue estimate that currently we have about 7,000 living languages on the planet. Of course, there's many more languages that are already extinct, but living languages, there's languages where there's speakers alive that use the language. Estimation is around 7,000. Now, you know, if we look at this, so languages are part of our cherished cultures and perhaps even of our identities. And language diversity is a good thing. It's really excellent. We want to preserve this language diversity, but it can also at the same time create barriers to the free flow of ideas, information, people, commerce, culture, administration, education. So diversity is good, but we don't want these sort of like barriers, these language silos. So what can we do about this? Because there's no chance that, you know, one of us can learn 7,000 languages. Like most of us maybe speak 2, 3, 4 languages or something like that, but that's pretty much it. And we find the same problem in the EU. So the EU strongly supports linguistic diversity, but at the same time, it also has to work. So it has to overcome barriers that are created by this diversity. And the EU motto is unity in diversity. So it has a strong focus on supporting diversity and also preserving diversity, but it also has to work in a practical sense. And so the question is, maybe language technology can help. And of course, with languages in particular, machine translation, but it could be other language technologies. Of course, speech recognition is really important. Speech synthesis, question answering, search, etc. I think Professor Sivaji had a long list of important applications of natural language processing. But here, initially, we're going to focus on machine translation. And of course, modern language technologies are by and large machine learning based. And the reason for this is that if you scale language processing to cover the whole language, the phenomena are so complex, if you've seen earlier on, that it's very, very hard to write rules. Sometimes we still do some rule-based, knowledge engineering-based work, but not very often. It's mostly machine learning-based. And of course, for that, data and resources are absolutely crucial. If we don't have the data, it's very, very hard to do machine learning. Although there are clever things such as transfer learning, zero-shot learning, one-shot learning, etc. But data is really, really crucial. And it's not just the size of the data, it's also the quality of the data. And this is where the European Language Resource Coordination comes in. And here you see the webpage of this. And I'm going to talk in the rest of the presentation. I'll give you a brief overview of what we do and how we came to do this. And all of this is about collecting data, but also collecting resources in the form of tools, etc. So let me give you a little bit of background. So I already mentioned that the European Union is strongly guided by respect for diversity. And here are some of the laws within the European Union. It's similar to what Sivaji showed us, kind of like with the Indian schedules, you know, that support, in particular, linguistic diversity. There's many, many more. And you might wonder, kind of like, you know, what's the distribution of native languages spoken in the EU? Which language has the most native speakers? And most people would guess English, but it's not actually the case. In terms of native speakers, it's actually German, then English, then French, no, then actually Italian, then French, then Spanish, then Polish, and so on. And we have all these languages. The EU supports all these different languages. And it does this in terms of what the EC calls CEF, the Connecting Europe facilities. These are platforms on the web that provide services for citizens in Europe. And of course, kind of like all these electronic services have to deal with many, many languages. So we have this service for citizens and businesses. This is a dispute resolution platform. If somebody in Finland buys some cheese in France, and by the time the cheese comes to Finland, it's sort of like gone bad, you know, somehow there's a dispute that needs to be resolved. There's, of course, health, which is really important across Europe and to support mobility. Social security, very important. E-justice, open data, cybersecurity, and so on. There's many, many of these DSIs in Europe, and they all have a strong need to do their business in many, many different languages. And that motivates some of what we do. So the ELRC, the European Language Resource Consortium, is led by DFKI and involves a couple of partners. So with a couple of companies, you've seen Tilde already before in the European Presidency Translator. There's Elra Elda, there's ILSP, is a Greek partner, Elra Elda is a French partner, and Crosslang are a company from Belgium. And we started in 2015, and the end date, hopefully we're going to go on for quite a long time. And the idea of this project is kind of like, so we as a consortium, we are working for the European Commission as a service provider, and we're collecting language data to initially improve machine translation systems that are provided by the EC themselves. This is the e-translation, you know, for these European services. Okay, and this is e-translation This looks similar to what you've seen before, but this is a service that is run by the European Commission. It provides basic machine translation services between all of the 24 EU languages. So this is more than 500 systems because we have 24 official languages. And you know that the number of machine translation systems, if you want to connect each of these languages, is 24 times 23. And here you see some use statistics on this. This is now much more. And eTranslate, you know, the machine translation service from the European Commission is also part of the presidency translator. It's actually the lowest level, which provides sort of like the basic services. And all the other systems provided by DBEL, by Tilde, or by DFKI try to improve on this and provide better services and also give customers a choice. Now, for the new tasks, you know, across Europe, for the public services, etc., language resources are needed. And the reason is that the EC, the European Commission, has very good language resources for internal purposes. You know, they have all the speeches at the European Parliament that have to be translated into 24 languages, and that's excellent training material. They have the EU law that has to be translated into 24 languages. That's very good training material. And so the EC systems, the eTranslate systems are very good machine translation systems for the specifics of the European Commission, but they're not very good if you go beyond that. If you provide this to the public services, to the member states, across Europe. And for that, we need training data. We need the right kind of training data. And that's part of the core sort of like task for ELRC. So our objectives are to identify the needs of public services across Europe that want to use machine translation, to engage with them, to find out what resources they have, to collect these resources, to process them, pre-package them, etc., to help our language resource donors with any technical and legal issues, and also to act as an observatory for language resources across Europe, kind of like, you know, cataloging what's available, putting it all together. If this is free data, making it available to everybody to share, and of course to feed it to the EC, to eTranslation, to improve their machine translation systems for tasks for which the system originally was not designed. Okay, so how do we do this? Kind of like, you know, and here sort of like an idea, because Europe is very heterogeneous, and you know, all the countries are very different, they're very independent, etc. So how can you, on the level of Europe, get everybody together to share the data? And the data here comes from the public services, from the ministries across all the governments and the NGOs across all the European member states. So in the first phase of our project, starting in 2015, we spent a lot of time on building trust, on identifying the right people in all the member states, building trust, and very importantly, building an awareness of the value of data. A lot of the ministries across Europe in different member states have a lot of data, but they were not really aware of the value of the data in the age of machine learning, in particular deep learning. And of course, in that initial phase, 2015 to 2017, we started our collection. Then the next phase, from 2017 to 2020, once we built the initial trust, we found the right people. I'll tell you a little bit more about how we did this. And we collected the first data. In the second phase, we concentrated on sustainability and feeding back the spoils that come from sharing the data, namely the better machine translation systems, back to the people that had contributed to these machine translation systems, because that's really, really important. Like, you know, sharing data was not so easy for them initially. Now that has completely changed, but initially, kind of like there was a human reflex to hold on to your own data. You know, many times people weren't really aware of the value of the data, and they just said, you know, this is mine, we don't want to share it. And they didn't even realize that, you know, sharing doesn't mean losing. That's just a copy that you give to somebody else. And this improves machine translation systems. So if you do something for your language, for your own local language, this helps machine translation with many other European languages. And if the other countries also share something about their languages, that helps, again, machine translation with many other languages. And that's a win-win situation. And that win-win situations, true win-win situations, are very, very rare in life. This is one of them. And I think people got this. So sustainability was kind of like, you know, to then, within each of the member states, build up a similar structure to the common structure ELRC that goes across all of the European states. And at that time we had about 600 donors. We also extended data collection to electronic crawling. So initially all the data came from actually almost like personal donations from all the ministries in the different member states, etc. And then we increased our online assistance. So our teams, kind of like from these companies that you've seen earlier on, went to the local sites, to the ministries, to the NGOs. And by NGOs, I mean things like national banks, institutes of technology and standardization, for example. There's many NGOs in Europe that have a lot of translation. And they create data, and this data is really, really useful for machine translation. That helps them. So feeding back the machine translation in the form of eTranslate, kind of like connecting them up with eTranslate, so that they could see the impact of the data that they collected and shared with everybody else. And that was really, really important. And the current phase that we're in has started in 2020. And here, I mean, you might have seen the name Andrea Losch at the first slide. So my colleague Andrea took over in 2020. So initially I looked after this, I coordinated this, but now I've handed over to a younger colleague here, one of my colleagues in my team here at DFKI, and Andrea is now heading this ELRC. So the focus is still very much on sustainability, and we're now opening up the machine translation and the data collection to SMEs across Europe, because there's a lot of the businesses in Europe are cross language boundaries, and also sometimes, of course, geographic boundaries. And often the two go hand in hand, but not always. So this is new. So and we extend the ELRC network, which includes the donors, and we grew from 600 to 3,000, etc. And we're also extending the type of data we're collecting. So initially, it was very much text focused, bilingual training data, previous translations, because we're focused on machine translation, but now we're also beginning to look at speech translation and also at tools and services. And we're including new languages. So Russian and Chinese are very important languages for the European Union, but there's also a possibility that this will be extended to Indian languages and a couple of other ones. So at the moment it's Russian and Chinese. So let me go on, skip these guys. So how did we do this? How did we find the right people? We have in each of the member states, we have 2 national anchor points. One of the national anchor points is a respected person within the area of language technologies. Usually he or she in each country leads the national research organization for language technologies or an important research center in these countries. And these we call the technology national anchor points, the TNAPs. And in addition to them, we also have PNAPs. These are the public service national anchor points. These are usually high-ranking people in the public services that understand the need for multilinguality, that have understood the value of data, and that are influential within the public services in the country. And they work together as pairs. And yeah, and this works really, really well. I think this is absolutely important. And what's also really, really important is that ELRC, the data collection, is not something that comes from the outside, that parachutes in, where the European Commission says, yeah, we want all your data, give us all your data. That doesn't work. Apparently about 8-10 years ago, the European Commission tried to do something like this, and it failed completely miserably. So when we started in 2015, we took a bottom-up approach. We did the exact opposite. We said we work with local ownership and responsibility, and that was our most important principle. And we got the local ownership and responsibility in each member state, and got everybody working together. To get that trust, we have to do lots of roadshows, meet the people, organize conferences, explain about the value of data, machine translation, help identify data, address legal concerns, data pre-processing, anonymization, etc. And so over the last 5 years, I have no idea how many workshops and conferences in all of the member states we did. These are some of them. And you see some pictures here. It's just kind of like, I don't know. Let me see. I probably have to move here. Yeah, that was a bit too fast. Sorry, it's a bit jumpy. Let me see. Yeah, here are the pictures. You see. So as I said, kind of like for years and years, we've done roadshows across Europe to get everybody involved. Okay, what have we achieved so far? So by now we've collected about 2,300 different resources. In terms of words, this is at the moment kind of like, this is only the machine translation relevant data. It's about 200 billion words in all different EU languages. Of course, the distribution sort of like varies quite a bit. We have more for the bigger languages. We have more for English, other language, than for sort of like, for example, Maltese, finish in terms of training data. That's clear. If you look at the distribution of the resources, because initially the focus was so much on machine translation, like the majority of it is, of course, bilingual data, which is really useful and important for machine translation, but there are also lexical resources, and they're monolingual data. Here's the legal status of the data. So this gray part is the data that's publicly available to everybody in the world, not just the EC. And an important part of our activity is that all the data that has been created with taxpayers' money, so data that has been created by the ministries in the member states, is usually paid by taxpayers' money, that this is also owned by the citizens of Europe and maybe the citizens of the world, because that data is publicly available. And wherever we can, we open up that data for use by everybody, also by businesses in Europe, but also outside Europe. And so these are open licenses. This is the part of the data that's at the moment under review. And this is kind of like some of the data cannot be shared publicly, that is only available to the EC. The data that we're collecting is not just used by the EC and by companies and organizations in Europe. In fact, you can probably guess which country is the most kind of like the biggest user apart from EC. Which one would you guess? It's the US. Yeah. And the second largest user, would you guess who's the second largest user? Downloader of the data. It's India. You can see here, kind of like, this is kind of like the use of the data that we've collected from outside the EU. Yeah. Here, this is the US, and that's India. And then Canada, and then of course China, and then Japan, Russia, and then other countries and stuff like this. Yeah. So all of this stuff is available, and you can play with it. And of course, it feeds e-translation and makes it better. So you can see e-translation, like about 210 updates since we started to e-translation machine translation engines. And these have served over 177 million translation requests since we started. Where are we now? Well, we have the tip of the iceberg. We have 200 billion words, but this is what's still to be collected, what's still to be harvested, and we're working on this. And of course, kind of like we won't get all of this, but I think we're very confident that with the trust and the momentum that we've been so lucky to get the trust, gain the trust, and build the momentum in Europe. So what are some of the challenges? I'm short here because I think we're running out of time. Maybe you can read up on these challenges. One of our publications was an ELRC white paper, where for each of the countries, each of the EU member states, and it's not just the EU member states, it's also Iceland and Norway. They're not part of the EC, but they're closely affiliated with the EC, and we're also working for them. I should have mentioned that. So we're working for 30 member states. Now, unfortunately, only 29, because the UK is unfortunately withdrawing from the EC. But you can see all of about the opportunities, the major chances, and also our major challenges, kind of like in collecting this data across Europe. And that's also an open publication. And maybe some of this can serve a little bit as sort of like, I don't know, how do you say, like a structure for similar activities somewhere else. So what's next? Where's ELRC going? So we're extending the language coverage. So we recently also moved to Russian and Chinese, but there's already on the horizon additional demand for Arabic and Indian. This is very much driven by the external trade partners of the EC. The opening up of e-translation to small and medium scale enterprises across Europe, that has already happened. So any small and medium company within Europe can now ask access to e-translate, the machine translation service provided by the EC, and it's for free up to a certain level of usage. And we're also kind of like extending our collection, kind of like we're looking much more into speech data, multimodal data, and also tools. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, so thanks to Professor Joseph. So listening to you is always a pleasure. And I'm basically very happy to see that is all the presentations from Joseph and Christina. So they were so much focused within our theme of the symposium. That is, I think this is the only SPARC project in which the linguistic, the issue of the diversity and the issue of the technical contents that we have discussed, so they rightly matches. So thanks again, and I think we basically finished in time, and it was such a pre-planned thing that is 2 hours completely, and we took exactly 2 hours for that. And if some one of you, yeah, that is so accurate. And I think if anyone have any observations or any questions, so they can put it on they can ask it, they can share that, or otherwise, I think we'll have to call it a day. Yeah. So, Doden?
Sir.
Yeah.
In
So
fact,
now-
there was a very nice talk, Professor Joseph, and listening to you and listening to Krishna, it has been very interesting, delightful talk. I could learn quite a lot of from the talk, and then hope we can probably extend, as you have mentioned, how we can extend to the Indian languages, specifically more on the resource collection from the grassroots level.
Yeah, I think we'll have a opportunity to play also in the ECE translation system, where Indian languages are say included as part of that, along with the Indian workers. So with this, I again thank Joseph and Christina for their nice presentation, being with us for a long time. And I wish both Christina and Joseph a visit to India and visit to NIT Silchar also. And for Joseph and Mary to see how the trees have grown, and with your signature, and for Christina to plant a tree, and so that the memory remains. Yeah. And obviously, lot of other technical issues and a lot of developments. Say we need to motivate the young researchers, so that all over the world people can work to break the language barrier. So the linguistic diversity, say India and Europe, these are 2 nice examples, but all over the world that exists. And our task is to break it or make the bridges smooth. With these wishes, I call the symposium break. That is, symposium is over for today. Yeah. Thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very enjoyable.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. Thank you, Christian.